anthem, as a family. Let's declare this to God this morning. So I'll stand with arms high and heart abandoned in awe of the one who gave it all. I'll stand, my soul, Lord, to you surrendered all. I am is yours. One more time. So I'll stand. Arms high, heart abandoned in awe of the one who gave it all. I'll stand, my soul, Lord, to you surrendered all. I am is yours. Amen. You may be seated.
Good morning. It is absolutely awesome to be here with you. I want to start with a story. Is that right? Well, I'm going to start with a story whether you like it or not. But not that I disrespect you, but I don't have any other way to do it. So anyway, I want to tell you this story. You've heard these stories about when you die and you show up at heaven's gate and there's somebody there to meet you. All right? Well, this is one of these stories. I got a man named Fred. A man named who? Fred died. And Fred went to heaven, and he meets this angel at the gate, and the angel's got a clipboard, and he's doing a heavenly survey. And so he asked Fred this question before Fred can come into heaven. He said, now, Fred, I want to know about one time on earth that you have done a completely selfless act. It's been charitable, it's been kind, it's been a really good deed. Just give me the best one that you've had. Just think about it. So Fred stops, and he thinks a minute. Then he says, I think I got one for you. There was this one day, I was walking down a street, and there about 20, 30 feet ahead of me, I saw this elderly woman who was just getting smacked around by this great big motorcycle dude. He was beating her. That just wasn't right. So I ran ahead, and I got to that big old motorcycle's dude. I got to his motorcycle, and I knocked it over to distract him, and it did. I got his attention. As soon as he turned around to me, I kicked him so hard right in the shin. He was howling. He bent over to grab his shin, and I gave him the best uppercut I ever could. Wacko! I hit him just as hard as I could. He was great. The angel says, I am impressed, Fred. That is great. He's writing this clipboard. Tell me, when did it happen? Fred looked down at his watch. He says, about 2 or 3 minutes ago. Sometimes loving like Jesus can seem to be costly until we consider what price Jesus paid to love you. Now, hold that thought through this whole message, that sometimes loving like Jesus can seem to be costly. And it can be, until we stop and remember, we consider, what price did Jesus pay in order to say, I love you. We began our message series last week with loving those that are different from us, which Jesus did. He loved those that were different from him. Now, we're learning that. Now, this week, we're going to step out a little harder, and we're going to learn how to love those who are marginalized. Love those who are what? Marginalized. Now, to be marginalized is to be treated as you are unimportant. Have you ever been treated like you were unimportant? Have you ever been treated that way? Not only are you treated as you're unimportant or powerless, but you're also to be disregarded, like your voice didn't matter. That's what to be marginalized is when we're thinking about it. Now, being marginalized is to be pushed to the fringes, to be pushed to the edges, to be ignored when you're out there. You're not the center of activity. Nobody wants to be marginalized if you can. Now, in our culture, I think it would be fair to say that you would agree with me that our culture is often unfair, right? And sometimes it's just plain downright cruel. It is. And even though today you may not be marginalized, you may have it all together today. It's in one sock. You can pick it up. Things are going your way. You got money in the bank. You got a nice ride. You got people that love you. You got all that thing going on. But with just a small change, that you may have no control over, all of a sudden you can be marginalized. Lots of different things will get you marginalized. Well, one thing that will get you marginalized is your age, right? Right? Nobody wants a preacher over 60, right? Who said yes? That you didn't want me? Ha! Ha! Right? So your age can get you marginalized. Just think about it. Men under the age of 25, the insurance company marginalizes you because they know you have no sense. They charge you more because you crack up a lot. Right? So it's age can get it, gender can get it, race can get it, your background, your language, your appearance, your health, your circumstances, or any of 1,000 other things can take you from where you're at to putting you on the margins. The problem with people on the margins is the people who are not on the margins generally don't notice you. That's the whole problem here. But Jesus did. Jesus did. When we're thinking about loving like Jesus, we have to work out in our minds ahead of time, how are we going to love the marginalized like Jesus did? Can you think in all the scripture that you've ever read, and if you've never read the Bible here, then I'm going to share a couple stories with you today. Those of you who have read the Bible, can you think of any story, any group, anywhere in the Bible that was marginalized that Jesus did not show love to? I mean, he showed love to the people who arrested him, beat him, spit at him, and nailed him to a cross. He showed love to the dreaded Samaritans. We talked about that story last week, right? The unclean ones. He showed love to them. And because Jesus can show love to the marginalized, shouldn't we show love to them as well, just like he did? So we're thinking about to love like Jesus, we need to have a common understanding of what love is. In order to have that common understanding of what love is, we taught this several times, especially last week. Hopefully your memory is good enough for that. So I want you to tell me right now, what is love? It's a decision. All right, somebody in the back got it. Woo! Love is a decision. Say it with me really, really loud. I want you to look to your left and then to your right, and I want you to look them straight in the eye and say, love is a decision. Now, here's the deal. I didn't say that you tell them that you decided to love them, but just tell them that love is a decision. It's not an emotion. It's not a feeling. So when you're having problems in your relationship and you're saying, I've fallen out of love with you anymore, you're smoking crack. You didn't fall into love. You didn't fall out of love. Love was a decision. What you're saying is, I have decided not to love you. Right? I mean, that's just the way it is. When we recognize it and we take ownership that love is a decision, we will work through our problems because we understand it is a conscious decision and we have the ability to make that decision to say, you know what? I may not be very happy with you right now, but I am going to make this work because I have decided to love you. And men, you are so lucky that women say that often. Often. We're thinking about it. So now that we know that love is a decision, the first act of love is always what? If you don't give somebody attention, you don't love them. You may like them, but you don't love them. You try to hang on to 5,000 Facebook friends. Can you give all 5,000 people attention? No. So don't mix up like and love and all those kind of things. So the first act of love is always the giving of attention. That's what Jesus did. That's what we shall do. That's our tagline for this series. We say it over and over again several times throughout the week. It'll help you live out the basic principles of this message. So I want you to say it really, really, really loud. You ready? I got a class at 12:30. I'm not going anywhere today. It's okay if we go through this 3-4 times. It's all right. So here we go. Ready? The first act of love is always the giving of attention. That's what Jesus did. That's what we shall do. Now, there are several stories in the scriptures that we could use, several stories about Jesus showing love to the marginalized. I picked 2 of them to share today to highlight different aspects of this whole idea of showing love to the marginalized. Now, I'm praying that you would ask God right now in your heart to open your eyes and open your ears to hear what Jesus has done so that you can then apply it to your life and love the marginalized in your life. Offer yourself up to be changed by the gospel. Offer yourself up to be what? Changed by the gospel. Just tell God, I'm willing to be a different person when I leave here today than I was when I came here today. Roger up for that transformation. Our first story has Jesus traveling towards Jerusalem. He's come down off the Mount of Transfiguration. He's done a few other things. He's now coming through Jericho. He's at the outskirts of Jericho when he meets and encounters some marginalized people. This is going to be Matthew chapter 20, and we're going to do 29 to 34. As Jesus and his disciples were leaving Jericho, a large crowd followed him. 2 blind men were sitting by the roadside, and when they heard that Jesus was going by, they shouted, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." The crowd rebuked them and told them to be quiet. But they shouted all the louder, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." Jesus stopped and called them. "What do you want me to do for you?" he asked. "Lord," they answered, "we want our sight." Jesus had compassion on them, and he touched their eyes, and immediately they received their sight, and they followed him. 4 things. How many things? 4 things. I'm gonna let you in a little preacher secret here. The number 4 is not important. I read this passage. I got 4 things to share with you. Rick Warren read this same passage, and he got 5. But in all fairness, he wrote like the second most popular book in the world after the Bible, The Purpose-Driven Life. So it's not surprising he got 1 more than I did. Preachers are always telling you 3 steps for that, 4 steps for this, 5 steps for this. We do that to help you figure out that there is hope. The end of the message is coming soon. What's really important is that it's not important how many I get when I read it. How many do you get when you read it? What does God say to you? Don't just wait for me or some other preacher to spoon feed the gospel to you. Take ownership of it and read it yourself. God may give you 6 or 7. You may smoke Rick Warren. Woohoo! You know, it's okay. So we're going to go through 4, right? Don't get hung up on the number. Here's number 1. See, the number is not important. It's the principle behind the number that matters. Number 1 says this. Hear the shout. Hear the what? Hear the shout. Go ahead, give me a big shout. Hey, see, shout matters. It does. A shout matters. But, you know, a shout can take many, many forms. I want to take you into Proverbs 21:13 from the New Living Translation. "Those who shut their ears to the cries of the poor will be ignored in their own time of need." Did you hear that? So the poor, the marginalized, they're shouting. And the Bible says if we ignore those shouts, what's going to happen to us? God's going to ignore our shouts in our time of need. I don't want that to happen. You don't want that to happen. So we need to learn how to hear the shouts of the marginalized. And the difficult thing is they don't always just shout with their voice. That's not the way it is. The blind men shouted with their voice. They cried to be noticed, to matter to someone. But not everyone in the marginalized shouts out boldly asking for mercy. It doesn't come across that plane. The shouts may come in the form of violence. You've seen violence, right? So we've seen in our schools. Every act of violence that happens in the school, preceding that has been a shout from some marginalized person to be heard, to be known that they mattered. For whether it was medical help or it was just to not be ostracized or not to be picked on. When we see the violence, we're seeing the end of it. But before that, many, many people had the opportunity to hear that marginalized person shout, and they missed it. I'm standing here in front of you as a guy who has missed some shouts from some people who needed help, and it didn't end well. And you don't want to carry that regret with you. Listen, learn how to listen for the shouts of the marginalized. Now, the shouts also could come through angry words or destructive behavior, like we've seen in the protests all around the world, that folks, these people are asking, they're asking to be noticed, they're asking to be given dignity, they're asking to matter in someone's eyes. Now, we know that the media gives them attention because the media gives these, the attacks against the police are being unfair, and there's probably justification on all sides. There probably are bad police. There probably are bad people that the police run into encounter. I'm not there. I don't know. But I would safe to say both sides are at fault in some instances. Bad people are just here. But the idea is we need to hear these people. God, we need to ask God to help us hear that we may show love and stop the cycle of violence. Stop it. If we will listen, if we will hear, if we will respond and show people that they matter, the violence can get reduced and eventually it can be stopped. So are you hearing the person with a shy question or just body language? Are you hearing them? Are you hearing them? Are you hearing the person that is in your presence but won't meet your gaze? Are you hearing the person that whenever you're around them and you speak, I have a little bit of a deeper voice and sometimes I get passionate and I speak and people flinch. Are you seeing that? Are you looking, but when the people aren't using their words, are you recognizing the fact that there's something beyond their behavior to the pain that they have? Are you looking there? It's got to be intentional for you to do there. Folks, it even can come in the form of people who avoid you because if they're around you, you're going to know that something's bugging them and they don't want you to know, so they avoid you. Or it can come in being embarrassed. Sometimes the shout for help is even masked behind a smile that says everything's okay. Oh, there's no problem in my marriage. My boyfriend and I are getting along just fine. Oh, I ran into a door. That's what happened. Oh, we're fine. I once had a couple when I was back in the Navy. Got me in big time trouble. They hadn't been married very long. Friday afternoon, he went home. Monday, he came in, and he told all the people around the division that all he and his wife had to eat that whole weekend was a jar of peanut butter. I got called up to see the captain why I let that boy have only a jar of peanut. I didn't know that's all that boy had was a jar of peanut butter. I could have gave him enough to go to McDonald's, but I didn't know. I didn't know how to look into his eyes and see the pain, to see what was going on behind the smiles and the scenes. We need to be able to do that. Okay? On your own, you are going to miss. You're going to what? Miss seeing or hearing way more shouts for help than you realize. It's happening around us every day in our schools, in our places of work, in our homes. People are shouting out for help, but we miss it because we don't know what to look for. It is terrible, terrible to do that. I want to take you to 2 Kings 6:17. 2 Kings 6:17. This is the story of the prophet Elisha. Can you say that with me? Elisha, not Elijah. Elisha. Elisha had ticked off one of the neighboring kings, and the king had found out where Elisha was staying, and he had sent his entire army to surround Elisha. And so when Elisha got up in the morning, he had him and his servant there, and they stepped out, and the servant looks up, and you went, whoop! The hills are all surrounded by this enemy's army, his chariots and his swordsmen. And he's like, Elijah, we're going to die. Let's see what Elijah does for this story. 2 Kings 6:17. And Elijah prayed, open his eyes, Lord, so that he may see. And then the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he looked and he saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elijah. God can see a realm that you and I can't see. God has help all around you. The marginalized are all around you. They're all around me. But on our own, we're going to miss way too many of them. Ask God for eyes to see and ears to hear what is around you. Pray like Elijah that God will open your eyes and your ears to see and hear the shouts of the marginalized. Jesus heard the shouts of the blind men. He heard them. He absolutely did. And he hears your shouts for help as well. You may not think that Jesus hears, but Jesus does hear. He hears. Okay? That day on the skirts of Jericho, nobody else paid attention to those two blind men. Matter of fact, they wanted them to hush up. But Jesus heard. Jesus heard the marginalized. Are you close enough to Jesus that you will hear the marginalized as well? Are you? In your personal walk with Jesus, are you close enough that you will hear like Jesus does? Or are you like the crowd that's out there? You kind of know Jesus, you kind of hang out with Jesus, but you don't hear like Jesus. Think about the people who live with you, who go to school with you, who work with you, who live next door to you. They're shouting out their pain every day. Makes me think about the courage it takes to be a first or second time guest here. Now, some of you are first or second time guests here today. I'm not picking on you. But the idea here is, do you know what it's like to walk into a church that you have never been to? Maybe you don't know anybody inside, or maybe you know just one person, and you showed up and they're not here yet. And you step into the door, you don't know, well, am I supposed to wait to be seated, or I go seat by myself? I see they're giving out coffee and donuts and things. Do I have to pay for those things? Are they free? Do I have to stand here and eat them, or can I go to my seat and eat them? You know? What am I going to do? I don't know when to stand or when to sit or how loud they things, or I don't know anything about this. And then we get to the end of the service. Holy smoke, they want me to fill out a connection card. We're going to take this Holy Communion. What is that? Ah! It takes a lot of courage to step into a place where you're marginalized because you don't know the game plan. You don't know. And then all the people that know the game plan, we come in, we get our coffee, we get our donuts, and what do? We come sit down and stare at a blank screen. We look up. All the new people, where are they? Behind me. So I walk around and I whisper in people's ear, hey, psst, there's a new person over there. Would you go say hi to him? You know what somebody told me? They did not appreciate me trying to set them up for a date. I am not involved in your dating life. Amen? That's going to throw me off. I shouldn't have revealed that. Anyway, where the heck was I? Anyway, I want you to understand that the marginalized people may be sitting right next to you. And Sunday is one of the most difficult days. Because if you're an adult and you're not in the habit of worshiping, and all of a sudden you decide to worship, why did you come? Because you just woke up one morning and said, woo, I'm feeling so happy. I'm going to go spend a couple hours with people I don't know, and they're going to ask me for money, and I'm going to like it. No, they're here because something's going on in their life. They're showing up. They need a change, and they're reaching out. Maybe for the one time in their life, they're going to reach out, and they're going to say, I need some help. Are we going to recognize they need the help? All you need to say is, hi, my name's Carl. What's your name? Well, I don't know everybody here. I don't want somebody to say that they've been here for a year. I don't care if they've been here for 10 years. You didn't know them. Say, I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you'd been here since Noah floated the ark. I haven't been here quite that long, but I'm going to try to remember your name next week. Just get over it. It's okay. It's okay. I'd rather have you make a mistake and greet somebody like the preacher who's been here for a while than to miss somebody who came for the first time or the second time. Somebody who's lost their job, or their marriage is crumbling, or they've got a child sick, or there's no food in their cupboard, or the doctor has told them something. Somebody needs to reach out and say, you matter. Love the marginalized like Jesus did. This is where the rubber meets the road. Where loving like Jesus really starts. It's in hearing the shout. Listen past the words. Look through the body language to see the hurt and the need. And after hearing the shout, here's number 2. Answer the call. What are you going to do? You're going to answer the call. You're going to stop and show love. Jesus was on a mission. Jesus was on a mission to get Jerusalem. He had to get to Jerusalem by a certain day. I mean, he was on a mission as the Messiah. Woo-hoo! That's a pretty important deal, right? So there was Jesus. He's coming through Jericho. Now, trust me, we've been to Israel. Even today, there is not a whole lot between Jericho and Jerusalem but hills and dirt. Some rocks. So Jesus, and he's walking. There's no Uber. He's walking. And he's got like 2 days to get from Jericho. And there he is, and his crowd's pressing around him, and he's walking through. He's finally got through Jericho, and what happens? He hears the cry of somebody that is on the margins. Jesus was about to do world-changing stuff. But I want you to know, just think about it. How many blind people, you biblical people, how many blind people had Jesus already healed in the Bible? Just say a bunch. Yeah, it's close enough. So Jesus had healed a bunch of blind people already, right? And he's on this Messiah ending. He's coming now to show the whole world, not just his people follow him, that he is the Messiah. He's going to change the world. He's got an important mission. And just know this, he's got like a week left to live. This is it. He didn't heal all the blind people in Israel, did he? But he did heal some. He proved he could do it. Why, oh why now does he stop to heal 2 more blind people? Why do we need another story of Jesus here? We already got him spitting, making mud, and putting it on people's eyes. We know he can do this. Why did Jesus stop to heal these 2 blind men? Because he heard their shout. And if the Messiah, who's on his Messiah powerful mission, he is fulfill his destiny in Messiah, that's pretty important stuff. If he can do that, if he can stop showing up to show the world and transform the world, then is there anything that you're doing that you can't be interrupted with to hear the shout of a marginalized person? I got to get to the movies. Woo! Netflix is on. Oh, no, I got a hair appointment. Did you see that flip? I can only imagine. Right? Oh no, I've got a hot date. What is so important in your life that you can hear the cry and ignore it? That you hear the shout and you ignore it? If Jesus can stop, I can stop. You can stop. He allowed himself to be interrupted. And this is a phrase that I want you to internalize. It says this: if I want to be well used by God, well used for God's purposes, I need to get used to being divinely interrupted. I want you to say that whole thing with me. Really, I want to make sure you get it. You ready? If I want to be well used for God's purposes, I need to get used to being divinely interrupted. Now, some of you didn't say that, so you must not want to be well used. Let me just ask you this question, because if I was sitting where you were, I would ask this next question. Preacher, how do I know it's a divine interruption? And it's not just my selfish purposes or a satanic distraction. And this is what I would answer you if I'd come back up on here and I was now the preacher. You ready for this? Get ready to write it down. This is important. This is life-changing right here. You're going to be wrong more than you're right. Sorry. Doesn't get any more profound than that. You're going to listen and hear, and you're going to answer, and you're going to be wrong. And that's going to frustrate you. You're going to give money to somebody because you thought they were hungry, and they're going to go buy booze or pills with it. Oh, I'm never going to help somebody again, right? That must have been Satan trying to take away my money. But here's the idea. Is there ever going to be too much love in the world? So the fact that you helped somebody who didn't really need it, but you showed them love like Jesus, is that a bad thing? So here's the deal. The longer you walk in Jesus' direction, the longer you walk in the obedience of faith, the longer you are in the Word, the better you are going to get at discerning the difference between a divine interruption, a personal desire, and a satanic deception. There is nothing. I cannot give you a pill. I cannot give you a study course. I cannot give you an exam. I cannot do anything for you except to tell you, spend more time with Jesus. That's how you figure it out. And over life, over time, you will start hitting the mark more often. Oh, that's what it feels like when God wants me to do something. That's what it feels like. That's what it feels like. But you're still going to get it wrong sometimes. Don't worry about the times you get it wrong. Err on the side of showing more love, not less love. Fair enough? That's what we need to do. Folks, I want to take you into Philippians 2, 3 and 4. And I'm going to read Philippians 2, 3 and 4 this time. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. Not looking to your own interest, but each to the interest of others. Each of you to the interest of others. We've talked about this many, many times. The first act of love is what? Always the giving of attention. That's what Jesus did. That's what we shall do. So we stopped here. We answered the call. We showed love. We allowed ourselves to be divinely interrupted, and now we're getting in, stopping, and showing love. Here's number 3. Don't assume, ask. Can you say that with me? Don't assume, ask. I just want to ask you, was Jesus all-knowing, all-powerful, all-seeing? Okay. So there he is. He's walking out of Jerusalem, out of Jericho. He's coming out of Jericho. And here's oh, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us. So he says, oh, here's another one. Stops, probably turned around, and what did he do next? What do you want me to do for you? Jesus, you just told me he was what? All powerful, all knowing, all seeing. Pretty obvious to everybody they're blind. Why did he ask them what they wanted him to do for him? He already knew he's Jesus. You know why he asked? Because in asking, he gave them dignity. He didn't assume they wanted their sight. He allowed them to state it. He granted them the option. How many times have you taken away somebody's dignity because you took away their ability to choose? Right? Think about what he did for them. It was tough in the first century. Tough in the first century to be blind. They had an option to live off their family or to beg. Of course they wanted their sight, but Jesus set the example for us not to assume that we know what the marginalized want, but to affirm their dignity by asking them. When we ask, we will make fewer. Notice I didn't say we won't make any. I said we will make fewer mistakes. I want to give you a personal failure of mine. It was back in December of 2016, I angered our then district superintendent. Big time. Matter of fact, I made her so mad that she said she was going to move me away from the point. Amen? Some of you are going, whoa, yeah, all right, cool. And after she calmed down a few minutes, she says, you know, I'll give you an opportunity to convince me not to move you, to voice your displeasure and your frustration. I'm going to the Dominican Republic in January for like 4 or 5 days, and you can accompany me, and you'll have a long period of time to sit next to me and talk. Oh, by the way, you have to pay your own way. Thank you. So not wanting to move from here, I went to the Dominican Republic with the district superintendent, and we did talk. And then she told me that I wanted to come back in June and pay my own way, and all these jobs that we looked at. And I was there in the room when she asked that pastor down there, what would you like us to do for you? We had like $80,000 have been raised. We went down there and spent all that money. Some of you remember these pictures and things. You didn't know the story behind the story. And so I went back down there in June and felt like I was pretty useless. Right away, they wanted my wife to help lay block. They didn't want me to do anything. So she was mixing up the mortar and putting them on the block. We went to this one church, and we built up the wall 3 or 4 blocks higher than it was. We put this beautiful metal gate in it so they could drive a car in it, painted the front door. All kinds of beautiful stuff that we had done, plus many other projects we had done. And then the district superintendent informed me that I wanted to come back to the Dominican Republic a year later and pay for it myself, to inspect everything we had done and to do another round of projects. So now it's January, June, a year later in June, we went back to inspect these projects. And I told Pastor Pedro there, so you got to take me around, show me all these other places that we had worked on last time so I could take pictures and show you what we had done with it. And we got out to this church that we had done all this block work on and put this beautiful drive-in gate, real small yard, but they said they wanted a gate that they could open up, drive their cars in, park, and then close the gate and lock it for safety. So we pull up to this church, and the gate is closed, and just inside the gate is a pallet with cement blocks on it. That gate hadn't been opened. No car has driven in there. And the grass is over knee-high. And I'm like, Pastor Pedro, what's up? He goes, well, you know, all the women that go to this church, we have no lawnmower. There was like 9 women that go to that church. They're not cutting the grass. They're not driving cars either. They walk just down the street. But they thought that we wanted to do something. We wanted to see something get built. And so they put that project on the list to make us happy. But they didn't really need it. They didn't really need it. Even though we asked, we didn't see the body language that said, we don't really need that. But we went to the Central Church, which was in the city, which is in the highest crime area. We had also given them a lot of monies to redo classrooms, do a lot of different things, put up a stairway up to another level so that they could add even more classrooms, so they could conduct training. So this is the most crime-ridden area in the city, like 100,000 people in the city, and they bring in people and they educate them in this. And every penny that we had gotten plus more had been well spent and well used and was being utilized in the Central Church. It was important to them. So you see the difference? Sometimes people will nod their heads. This is how you know how you Southern people say no? Yes. Yes, Pastor, we can do that. But then you're not going to do that. It took me a year to learn it. So this is the whole idea here. When we're thinking about Jesus, this is Matthew 20:32. He stopped and called them. What do you want me to do for you? He asked. One of the problems they have down there is feeding the hungry. And so we had a man who's a agriculturist, arborist, whatever you call a person that does gardening. And he did a lot of study on what kind of gardens would work in the Dominican Republic. So he came up with the concept of a keyhole garden. You ever hear that? Say it with me. Keyhole garden. Basically, you take like 3 block high and you build it up, and in one edge you kind of build yourself a little walkway into the center so it's kind of wrapped around like a keyhole would be. But then you have a little walkway and you build up this chimney-like idea in the middle. And the idea was for the people who were poor to take their food scraps and throw it down this little chimney, and with the rain and the water they put on it, it would all disintegrate, and then that would be the fertilizer that would spread out with the garden, right? It was awesome that we had these things. We built like 4 of them, and it came back a year later, weeds. What we didn't understand was these people are so poor, they don't have food scraps. They eat them. And what they don't eat, they give to their pet. They didn't have peels and things and fruit to throw in there. So again, you've got to ask. Show them the dignity, but also look behind the words to see the behavior. When you learn to ask questions, you will be better at loving like Jesus. And we get to number 4 here. Show compassion, do good. Say that with me. Show compassion, do good. Now, opportunity to excel time. Are you excited? Yeah. Who was here in 2016, June? Don't give me this little thing. Own it. Jesus knows. All right, here's the deal. You remember this. We had a series back in 2016 called Hanging with Jesus, Life on the Vine. Remember? And in there, we explained the difference between the fruit of the Spirit, kindness, and fruit of the Spirit, goodness. Your turn. Tell me. But let me remind you just a little bit, okay? I'll help you out here a little bit. There is a great difference between being kind and doing good. We need to know this. Kindness is a matter of awareness. Kindness is a matter of what? Awareness. Kindness is a matter of being aware that there's a need for kindness. Goodness is a matter of preparedness. Goodness is a matter of what? Preparedness. So kindness is a matter of awareness. Goodness is a matter of preparedness. We've got to get those kind of things. Fruit of the Spirit, kindness, sees a need and reacts. Sees a need and what? Reacts. To meet it with the resources that are available on hand right away. You don't go search for anything, you just use what you got. Little kid getting ready to jump into the street, you look over there, you see him, you reach out, you snatch a kid up, you save a life, right? That's being kind. Being good is a matter of preparedness, right? Being good is when you're walking down that same street, but your eyes are looking like this. You're already looking, saying, all right, I'm watching for some child to jump in front. I'm ready. You see what I'm saying? I am actively looking for it. I am prepared to do good. Bearing fruit of the Spirit, goodness is deciding now. Oh, wait a minute. Goodness is more proactive than reactive. Do we get that one? Goodness is more proactive than reactive. Bearing the fruit of the Spirit, goodness, is deciding now not to be selfish, both now and later. We talked often about how everything that God gives you is not for your use. If you are going to be good, if you're going to do good, you have to decide now. If you look at one of your next steps is to decide now, out of all the resources God has given me, time, money, energy, all that kind of stuff, what am I going to set aside to do good with? That's what we're talking about. I am preparing and having the resources available that I can do good. So I'm going to take you to a second gospel story now. This is in the Gospel of Mark. We're going to do 5:25 to 34. Listen to 25, 25, 34. Jesus is again traveling. He's on his way now to help a Jairus whose daughter is dying. And so he's traveling to help a synagogue leader now. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had, yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in a crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately, her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding against you," his disciples answered. "Yet you can ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." I want you to think about the crowd that was following Jesus and just how rude they were. The man is on a mission to save the life of a little girl, and they're pressing in on him so hard that it's hard to move, right? Just think about how rude it was for the crowd to do that. And even more, though, because the crowd is moving slowly, it gives this woman the opportunity to both think about and then actually touch Jesus Christ to get her own healing. Now, you have to understand what it means and what all the cultural laws were of why this woman was bleeding and why she was marginalized, what the problem was. She had been bleeding for how many years? All right, ladies, imagine having a flow of blood constantly for 12 years. You want to talk about annoying, right? It was just horrible. But in Jewish culture, going all the way back to the book of Leviticus, where they give all these cleanliness laws, a woman who was experiencing the flow and issue of blood was ceremonially unclean. She could not participate in any religious ceremonies. And she couldn't be around other people, because if they were around her, if they touched her, they would become unclean, and they could not participate in them as well. How long has she been bleeding? This woman is separated from her family, from participating in the life of her family for 12 years. She has no more money. She's been to all the doctors. All of this is happening with her. And because of this, and she can't get any help, she's being treated as a social outcast. Right? Social outcast. And beyond that, now, she's supposed to, the way an unclean person, when they were walking down the street, they were supposed to shout, "Unclean, unclean, unclean," so people could give you a wide berth. Now she's in this crowd. If she says even one time, "unclean," what are they going to do? They're going to prevent her from getting anywhere near Jesus, right? So she has to violate her whole upbringing. She has to be selfish for a moment. She has to cry out because nobody else is going to hear her. So she reaches in and she just believes in her heart, if I just touch the hem of his garment, some translations say the fringes that are on his garment, then I will be healed. There's a mystery in this passage here. All the people that were crowding in, the disciples say, there's all kinds of people pressing in against you, Jesus. How can you ask who touched you? And Jesus said, I felt the what? Power go out from me. See, the difference was all those people around with Jesus just pressing in, they didn't have faith for healing, but that woman did. And now I want you to think that Jesus was reluctant to heal this woman. If he was reluctant, then the power wouldn't have went out. He was a willing participant in this. But Jesus stopped. He felt the power go out. He stopped, and what did he do? He asked, who touched me? He knew she was already healed. Who touched me? Because he wanted to do one more thing for her. He didn't want to just do the act of being kind. He wanted to do something good for her. So when she recognized she couldn't escape from it, she does what? She comes and she falls on Jesus' feet. She falls in front of him, and then she tells him the truth. Did you think all the other people disappeared? So they heard the truth too, right? I have been bleeding for 12 years. You know what all those people did? Right? They don't want to be around her. She's an outcast. And what did Jesus say to her? Listen to this. It's so important. This passage just fills me with hope. He said, daughter. What did he say? Daughter. He could have said woman, and in other occasions he did say woman. He said daughter. He restored her to the family. He restored her. He didn't say go see the priest. He is the Messiah. He's standing around. He said daughter. So when everybody else goes around now, what do they have to recognize? The Messiah said she's the what? Daughter. He gave her community. He didn't just heal her physically. He brought her back into family. It is absolutely amazing. We have a lot of benevolence calls, a lot of generous giving calls around here. People needing help with their utility bill or their car or medical bill or whatever. And we have a fund set aside for that. This is something the church is called to do. But we have learned over a period of time that just giving money doesn't solve problems. We need to ask questions. We need to ask questions, and we need to allow the people to answer. But we need to get beyond just the answer, I need you to pay my light bill. Well, I understand that you need us to pay your light bill. Let's talk about how you got in the situation where you needed somebody to help you pay your light bill. Was it medical? Was it a loss of job? Was it house, wherever it is. And a lot of times maybe we need to help for 2 months or 3 months. Maybe we need to help get some other people involved to help. Maybe it's just if I could just get off of this debt that I've got, then I would be okay. I'm back working. But you know what we find a lot of times, especially with the elderly? The answer is their bills have gotten so high, their health has gotten so low, that they no longer can sustain a single household. They don't have the resources to live in their house. And so they just go around month after month after month trying to get other people to help. And that leads to a poverty mentality that is horrible. So we have to help them recognize that, your life situation has changed. You need to move in with family, or we need to go into some type of a home, somewhere where you don't have to have this, how am I going to eat tomorrow feeling every day. That's the way we have to do it. Folks, I want to talk to you about this. This woman's symptom was bleeding, but her real problem was being marginalized by religious law. She was unclean because she was bleeding. Jesus did good to her, and he restored her to community. When a prophet accepts and pronounces you as daughter, you're in the house, you're in the family. The people accept you as well. You've seen this happen in other instances. Who in here likes clothes? Who in here is not telling me the truth? Who in here likes cars or guns or bikes? Or what happens is all these manufacturers, they go out and they pay some celebrity a lot of money to wear their things. So when you see somebody that you think is pretty cool wearing their stuff, what do you want to buy? Their stuff. So we follow along. This is why you have to buy new clothes all the time, because they get new celebrities to wear different stuff. If you just get off the fashion train and say, the stuff I got's okay, but we don't do that. Jesus is kind of like the same thing is going on here. Here is Jesus, and he has stood up and said, hey, look at me. I'm showing love to the marginalized. What should you do? Show love to the who? But I just didn't assume what they wanted. I asked them. I gave them dignity, right? I listened. I looked at those kind of things. God thought of it in creation. Jesus lived it out before our very eyes, and now it's our turn to apply it. This is how we show love like Jesus to the marginalized. It's not easy. You need God's help to do it. Let's say our tagline one last time. Ready? Ready? The first act of love is always the giving of attention. That's what Jesus did. That's what we shall do. All praise, glory, and honor now and forevermore be to God. Take out your connection card. Hopefully you had the early part of the service to complete it, at least your name on it. I'll give you a second to do that. Mark your level of participation. If you're a first-time guest here today, we're excited that you're here. Over here at the table with Miss Haley and Miss Shelley. Shelly, you're kind of sitting down too low. There, she stood up. Okay. All right. We have a gift for you. Just go there and tell them you're a first-time guest, and they'll give it to you. We think it'll help you grow spiritually. Mark your on the next steps on the back of the connection card. They're also on the back of your message notes, so you'll remember what you told Jesus. We're going to pray over the connection cards. When you take your message notes home, that'll remind you what you told Jesus you would do to grow closer. We're going to share Holy Communion. You don't have to be a member of the church at this point or any Christian church to receive Holy Communion. You do need to accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior. If you've never done that before, you can do something like I'm going to do right now with a simple prayer. Almighty God, I kind of feel like I'm on the margins. I put myself there. And so I'm asking you, Lord, to bring me into the family, to bring me into the community. I recognize I've been living for myself and not living for you, but I want to change all that today. Forgive me. Heal me. Help me to grow. Help these people to love me and encourage me. I choose to believe in you this very day. In your holy and precious name of Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen. If you just prayed something similar to that prayer, come see me after the service. We'll get you started. Or my email's on the back of the worship guide. You can set up an appointment. You don't have to participate in Holy Communion, but if you choose to participate in Holy Communion, we're going to follow this ritual. You may need to turn your knees to the left or the right so somebody inside can get out. 4 or 5 minutes, just commune with your God. When Jesus ate with his disciples on that last night, he